Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lyfebulb Live. This week, we have a great conversation. I think it's one that's really important and it transcends over any illness, although we are focusing a little bit on transplants, and it's the financial strain that having an illness has on you. Karin, I'm really glad we're talking about this because I think it's something that a lot of people just don't discuss.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's something, as you said, it affects all different diseases. But in transplant, because it is a lifelong treatment, it is an incredibly complex treatment, and it requires 10 plus drugs a day. So you have so many components that lead to costs. Not just the actual transport to the transplant and then the surgery, but the lifelong maintenance. So we're really excited to have Brandon Mouw here with us today, who's a fellow pancreas transplant. We share that experience and also the experience with type 1 diabetes for many years. So welcome, Brandon.
Yes, welcome,
Thank you
Brandon.
so much for having me.
We're happy to have you, and thank you so much for being such an amazing ambassador. You are always there with posts and connecting with our other ambassadors, and I have to applaud you and thank you so much for that. It's really important to me personally as director of communities to see our ambassadors engage with each other like that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's awesome. I that connection I never even knew existed, and it's so neat to be a part of.
Yeah, I've watched you actually have podcasts with some of the other ambassadors, which I just love watching that networking because I think it is important to talk outside your disease area, which I've never had a transplant, but I definitely can relate to what you guys are talking about. So money is such a stressor when you're going through any illness. But as Karin just said, 10 drugs a month that you need to, or a day that you're on, I mean, that has to weigh on everybody.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's the complexity, right, Brandon? It's the complexity of ordering, refilling, thinking about them. When do you take them? How do they affect you? So all that we have talked about to a certain extent. And today it's really about how do we pay for them? Many of them are sadly generic. Because I wish we had new drugs for every single aspect of the transplant process because they would be better, more focused, less side effects. We still have to live with some older ones, but at least they're less expensive. But Brandon, how do you feel? What is it about the transplant process that was the most stressful from a financial perspective?
I would say the whole thing. And I was put in a very unique situation where I had to pay cash and upfront for my transplant itself.
Wow.
A pancreas only transplant is an optional coverage under the Affordable Care Act, and none of the insurances, Medicare, or any Medicaid plans covered a pancreas only transplant. So I had to come up with the money before I was even able to receive the transplant. And that was $250,000. So it started off with money being an issue for this procedure in the first place.
That puts so much pressure on you, I would say, to do well with it. And also I can imagine how you were, detailed and assessing every single person in the hospital when you were paying for it. It's interesting when you pay for things, you value it differently.
Yeah, and your expectation is so much different. And it's if there, with every little bump in the road, it's like, is there something wrong? What can I do to fix it? And it made me kind of like hyper aware of it. But that was just the beginning. And then the first time I picked up medications and seeing the price of those, and fighting with the insurance to see who would cover what and what percentage, and the deductible and all of that issue was very shocking because I was used to paying for insulin and test strips, and I'd be willing to pay a little bit more money for better test strips as a diabetic because they used less blood and stuff like that, to now trying to figure out of the 3 drugs they prescribed me for anti-rejection, which ones I can truly afford and which ones I have to fight very hard to get. And it hasn't really changed in the 2.5 years post transplant.
Do you feel that you become a more educated patient because of this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it really comes down to the affordability aspect is survival. If I can't afford it, I simply can't live. And and that comes with a lot of diseases or procedures, but specifically transplant. If I then go into rejection and get hospitalized, that's a whole nother cost that all of a sudden comes up that I just don't want to deal with. And so it's in my best interest to manage what I have now the best I can, any way I can, so that it doesn't turn into a bigger snowball effect as time goes on.
The stress and the anxiety around that alone is tremendous. I can't even imagine having to look at my medication and say, all right, which one can I afford to take right now? That is so stressful and so intense. It just blows my mind that there are people going through this, and I get it. I'm one of them too. It just, to hear someone else say that they had to pay $250,000 for something that was going to save their life is just, it's overwhelming to me personally. And Karin, you said something to me that I never ever thought about ever until I learned it from you. Rejecting it, like, that must be so intense because you are paying for it, and if your body does reject it, wow. It's not like, you put brakes on the car and the brakes don't work. That's a car. It's totally different. You are a human being, and the stress and the anxiety on top of the financial part of it, of rejecting an organ. Wow. That just is really a lot for me personally. I just can't even believe it. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, but Brandon, I think your situation is truly unique, because most people with transplants do have some coverage. With kidney transplants, it's actually one of the very few diseases in America that is covered by the government pretty well by Medicare. And if you have a pancreas and a kidney, it is covered by your insurance, and of heart, lung, so on. So it is unique, your situation, but doesn't mean that it's less important or less real. It is tremendous, and I just wonder how one could do better, because when you were living with type 1 diabetes and you had such hypoglycemic unawareness and you were so sick, the risks that you were taking as a patient at that time without the pancreas, they would have affected you so much, and the system would have been so expensive to have you as a patient with very poorly controlled diabetes that, if one were to do the math there, the 250,000 is a bargain. I wish one could go back and do that math and just go to the government or to an insurance company and say this is actually worth it. I urge you to do that. There should be a way to do it, because this is not normal, even though the country is different than many others.
And it's strange because some states, every state is different with health insurance, even though it's the same brand of health insurance. They cover different things based on state, based on counties. It's all broken down, and a few other people have had a pancreas-only transplant where it was completely covered.
Right.
Sometimes, like, a lung transplant is covered only at 70%, and it depends on what caused that lung to fail. And so there are things that just really aren't discussed, and I didn't know about any of this until it came up in my life. And to have the opportunity to talk about it, to share, to make other people aware, I think is very good, because then there's more people, when they hear about it or it comes up in their life, they can make other people aware as well. Because I petitioned, I was living in Arizona, and I had my transplant done at Mayo Clinic, who was willing to take the risk on me for the transplant. And I sued the insurance company. I sued and petitioned the government and the governor to make an exception to the rule, because they claim they cover all medically necessary procedures. And every doctor agreed that this was medically necessary, even though it was part of the exception. And the final ruling was there is nothing that can be done. And while they agreed that it was medically necessary, there was nothing that can be done, because the federal law is supreme. And so, and then, what do? Do you give up, or do you keep fighting? And I decided to keep fighting because
Yeah.
it's like, it's one of those things where is it worth the fight? And to me, it was worth the fight because life is too precious to give up. And I thought, even if I can't make it to the point of getting the finances, at least I know I tried my best.
So
And
Brandon, I think what you said there, this is too important to give up. And it's very true. If you have all the money in the world, but you're sick, and you have hypoglycemic unawareness, which I also had, where you're not sure you will wake up in the morning, right? Because you could be dead in bed, which is the horrible expression. Of course you're going to spend whatever money you have, but I really believe, and I heard this from one of our transplant surgeons who's working with us. He said there's an opportunity within the transplant space for patients to organize, and I think that's true. If you look at HIV, you look at cancer, you look at orphan disease, parents and patients have organized, and they have come up with great campaigns where things have gone through. In transplant, I think patients are very sick and very vulnerable when we go through the transplants. We can't organize. We just got to survive. But as coming out of it, and now being in better shape, it's time to do so. And I do think that transplantlife.com, which is the platform for patients and care partners to connect, is a place to do so. If we can come together as a group and then create a message, create a story, and also do some pharmacoeconomic analysis. We can hire an agency, or we can do it ourselves, and really show the improvements. For me, one of my absolute pet peeves is life insurance. Why should we not get access to life insurance when we have so much better prospects post-transplants than before transplant? I mean, as people with type 1, where the vascular damage, the risk of stroke is 10 times higher than for a normal person, and so on. And with a transplant, you're suddenly in a different category. Why are we now not getting life insurance? So I think there are opportunities to organize and to make a change that we could do.
I love that you said that, Karin. One of our associates who's worked with us before, Aaron, was part of the rallying to the government about HIV, and was help make the change. And that is the only way to make a change, is to get together, find a way to get the message out there. And Brandon, by you sharing your story, someone else is going to be more willing to share their story. And I've seen you on Transplant Life. You're one of our regulars there, posting, getting people to understand and see what is going on, and the financial strain is huge. It is huge. And Transplant Life is perfect for that, because I've watched you all talk about things that are so important and so pivotal. Make the change together. It's the only way to do it. I agree with that completely. We can complain about it all we want, but until we actually lobby to try to make a difference, it just goes flat.
Yep.
Yeah, and really the change is by making awareness, and then like you said, it's coming together, and truly, this is how laws get changed in the United States, because I've been a part of it. We can write a bill of how to change whatever aspect it is that needs to be changed. Go and introduce it to whoever local congressman that we have. Go and meet them in their offices, and you basically plead your case, and they decide if they take it on or not. And if there's enough people supporting it, then all of a sudden it becomes an issue that they can get behind, and they can bring to the floor and vote on it, and it can go to committee, and then the law can be changed for everyone. But that takes a team of people. You and I can't do it alone. Everyone has to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I've heard so many people say before. You need two types of people to make a change in advocacy: people infected with the illness and people affected by the illness. And I'm affected by transplant just merely because I have friends who I love and adore that have gone through it and have, really had some hardships. So, I'm willing to help out in any way I can. And I know that there's other ones of our ambassadors that would be totally willing to help out, because then we band together and we form this united front, which is pretty empowering.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a part of that's a movement that we need to start. It's part of I think our obligation to our community.
Yeah, and especially, you know, after this amount of time, it's like, okay, how can I really help to make a change? Because I am here today because other people gave up a lot of things to help me, and someone passed away in order for me to be alive. And I truly think that, you know, a newfound purpose in my life is to give back and to help those who are in a situation like I am. And, you know, even though the aspect financially of transplant is it's ever abounding and never ending, even having healthcare coverage, that, you know, the monthly amount and then the deductible amount, all of that, you know, pays a very large toll, but it doesn't take away from my feeling of, you know, it's worth it. I never think like, oh, just forget about it. It's like fight. You see what it kind of fuels that fire within me to keep doing what I feel like I am supposed to do, because it's just
It's giving you purpose.
that's right. It's a purpose that is worth fighting for, because I'm here for a reason. You know, it's just
Brandon,
it's
can I
the
ask a
strangest
question?
thing.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question? Because one thing that has happened to me, I feel a little bit after my transplants is, and I say it very, I mean, I don't look down upon, but I look at people differently when they don't have a purpose. You know, I look at people who do things that I find to be totally, you know, superficial. And I think, what are they're wasting their lives, they're wasting their careers, and they just don't have the passion. You know, you live a life without passion. What is that life? You know, and maybe I'm not seeing the passion in them. Maybe they're showing it in different ways. But I have a different sense of assessing and meeting people now that if I don't see it in their eyes, if I don't see it in my teammates' eyes, you know, it's not about hours, and it's the commitment to something, you know, and it can be in different jobs. I mean, if you are committed to your grocery store when you're the owner or you're working there, that's great. But just have a commitment to something and be passionate. Otherwise, there's no reason to be alive. We should just be worms or vegetables.
Right. And it really, you know, this whole process showed me, because I had a purpose before, and then that was quashed with my hypoglycemic unawareness. Um, and I had to reassess everything. And you know, here I am now. But that whole point in life where there is a point, I think, changes as you experience things.
Yeah.
And some people just have not had the experience or the opportunities in life to take advantage of it to really get behind. It's kind of comes down to like just coasting through
Yeah.
life. And that's why when I do share my story, uh, people are shocked. They simply don't believe me. They think I'm lying when I share my transplant journey and how much it costs and stuff like that, because they have never experienced it. They've never heard of it. It's crazy. And that's why like the work that you guys do with Lyfebulb and Transplant Life is so valuable, because it puts like what I say in context with everyone else's stories and journeys, and just shows that, hey, everyone has a journey and a story, and it's not just me.
Well, you know what? I have to say a few things about this, because before any of my diagnoses, which are aplenty, I didn't really have a purpose. Yeah, I mean, I wore many hats. I probably had more jobs than anybody on this call right now will ever have in their lives, because I couldn't find what I wanted to do. And I was doing some volunteering. It wasn't like I wasn't doing any of that. I volunteered for many organizations, but I still couldn't find my voice. And unfortunately, I got cancer and found a voice. And then I found a voice through finally admitting all of my mental health issues. And then I got MS. And, you know, it's a whole host of things. However, Karin, what you said, I do agree with, but I think sometimes us sharing our stories, it is what can ignite the passion in somebody else. Brandon, you just said, I tell my story and people can't believe it. You may eventually tell your story to somebody who's going to be like, I want to help you. I want to do this, this, and this for you. I want to help you. That is why telling your story is so important, not just for us, because it's cathartic and it does help us, but because sharing our story could ignite something in somebody else. It could be a solution, an innovation, money. I don't know what it could be, or it could just even be a hand to hold, because that is passion in people. I have caregivers in my cancer organization, care providers that have lost a loved one, and they're still care providers to our community because they found their passion in caring for people. So it is just about finding that connection. I think for a lot of people, they are stagnant. They just stay in their lane. And that is really hard to break, right? It's really hard to break away from that. But we can do it by sharing our story. I really truly believe in that. And
You're
who
so
knows?
right, Annmarie. You're so right.
Who knows who's watching this right now? Maybe someone's watching this and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I want to help lobby to change a bill. Like, we don't know. That's why we have to keep sharing it. And whenever we have an innovation challenge, that's why I'm always saying, you never know who you know. There's somebody out there, and that person might really need to have that passion into their lives because it may be what they're missing.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get out of soapbox just now, but I am short, so I like to stand on a soapbox sometimes.
No, it was good. One of the things I was talking with Annmarie about before we started was the financial toll mentally of just dealing with illness, especially a transplant, and worrying about if the pharmacy even is going to have the medication in stock like they say they do, and you show up and it's not there, and you're like, well, I got 2 days left and you said it was ready, and now you're saying you're not going to get it for 5 to 7 days, and just all of those little things take a financial toll mentally, because it's time you can't get back, and time is the most precious resource I feel like I have. And that those little things, I think the aspect of professionalism within the health care community can be improved significantly. And if when I bring it up, and I'm just
Brandon,
like, hey,
Brandon, that's where innovation comes in, because you're pointing now to which I almost think is worse than the actual financial toll. But then I didn't have to pay for my transplant, so I don't know that feeling. It must be terrible. But the emotional toll, when I'm sitting on the phone and they're telling me I'm not going to get my tacrolimus until next week, and I yell at them. So you're now responsible for my kidney and my pancreas failing. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be yelling. I don't want my blood pressure to be super high. And it's something that they're doing to me because of the inefficiencies in the system. And that's where I think our innovation challenges are so important, because a good innovator, a good entrepreneur will identify those gaps and actually try to solve for them. Because again, what we're trying to do is to improve the quality of life. So our quality of life as individuals with transplants or cancer or MS, or as patients, we can improve it by small, little innovation. That may not be the next anti-rejection drug or the next targeted immune therapy, but they are very important for our well-being, and it allows us to thrive. And thriving with a disease is, I would say, almost as important as surviving, because otherwise, what is life if we're just there surviving every single day?
That's the cost,
Absolutely.
though. We're talking about cost, right? And Brandon, I am not at all minimizing the cost that you spent or my friend spends or that I spend, but the emotional cost is pretty profound, and we can't get that back. Like, I can never get back the emotional strain of anything that has happened through my diagnosis. Neither can you both. That's you get reimbursed sometimes through insurance and things. You can't get that emotional anxiety, PTSD, depression, everything else that comes along with everything that you just said, Karin, and what you said, Brandon, before about just even thinking about which drugs I can take this week that aren't going to cost me, I was going to say my kidney, but that seemed a little, maybe that's not a good pun in this group, but anyways.
Anyway,
This has been a great conversation. Brandon, I hope to see you more on Transplant Life. And I think that you should be putting a post up there about making a change in our system and how it's working, because I'm pretty sure our community will respond quite beautifully to you.
Yeah, it's, it's one of those little things, and I do think that the more we talk about it, and the more even in the community of transplants, we make each other aware that really great changes can come from it. So thank you so much for having me on.
What a great way to end it. That was a perfect statement. Thank you so much, Brandon,
Thank
for
you
your
so much.
time.